Hey gouache lovers, welcome and hello newbies. Thank you so much for joining me. I am actually doing a Let's Talk Gouache kind of a video today where I give you some thoughts on gouache, how to use it, just a little bit of history about gouache. All right, so stay tuned and definitely watch the video and you will be able to actually see how I paint this koi fish. It's actually sped up. It's over 2 hours long. I'm so sorry, but masterpiece can't be rushed. Just saying. All right. So I do hope you enjoyed. I'm trying to do a voiceover for it, but it's 2 hours plus long. So bear with me. I hope you find a tip or two that can help you with your gouache technique. And and just master it, become better gouacher. All right, so listen up for the info and then you can definitely go ahead and catch the video afterwards. Let's talk gouache. Gouache is an opaque watercolor. It's a type of water media. Gouache is similar to regular watercolor paint. Gouache is considered an opaque watercolor medium. It is designed to be opaque. Gouache has been in existence for over 600 years, and it is normally used by commercial artists for, say, poster painting, illustrations, sometimes comics, and they mostly use it for design work. So gouache is neither transparent, which means it allows light to pass through, nor is it translucent, and that also means some light doesn't allow much light to pass through. Like if you water it down, it becomes a bit thinner. Gouache is opaque, it's matted when it dries, and it can be blended. So you can blend it with water to thin it out, or some people blend it with white or even acrylic. It also dries darker and quicker and than the regular watercolor pigment. Gouache has highly intense packed pigments in it, which makes it opaque. Thus, it doesn't allow light to pass through, just like which is the difference between watercolor paint and gouache. Although gouache does behave like watercolor in some instances, depending on how you're using it, when you add lots of water, you create a wash. And a wash is a watered down mixture, like it's very diluted when you dilute the gouache with lots of water. So it becomes a wash just like you would use it in watercolor wash. Gouache can be reactivated once it is dried. So you can, and that sometimes can cause lifting too. So once it's dry, you can either blend it out, pull the pigment from the designated spot that it is, and you can actually reactivate it. So lifting may occur when the gouache paint is reactivated and water starts to separate from its original spot or state, and you can call that lifting. So gouache, if you have not gotten the pronunciation as yet, this is a cute trick. Instead of saying gouache, remember the word squash, but don't put the S on, but put a G. Gouache, gouache, gouache. All right, so gouache. So gouache paint is really a mixture of natural or synthetic pigments. You use gum arabic or say gum dextrin, which is dextrin is more from starch base and the gum arabic is more from the sap of the tree. Two species of tree combined together, they harvest that to get the gum. So you add water as well and it creates a thick painting medium, and that tends to dry chalky and opaque in texture. Thus it is it creates gouache. All right, so gouache paint is best suited for paper. You may want to use it on other surfaces like canvas or board or stone, but it is best suited for paper, more so watercolor cotton paper. Okay, gouache can be reactivated and change the painting, meaning if you start painting on a picture and you don't like it, you can reactivate it with water and paint some other color on top of it. So you can paint dark to light, let it dry, and then light to dark. So it also operates, it's very flexible like that, as opposed to watercolor that you can't really do that. All right. So that is considered gouache being very versatile and forgiving when you're able to manipulate it like that. Okay. So let's talk about the Arabic, gum Arabic, the base for the gouache. So gum Arabic is plant-based. It is also known as gum Sudani, Sudani, or acacia gum, or Arabic gum, or people call it gum acacia, or just acacia, or the Indian gum, or Senegal gum. It's got lots of names. It's a plant-based. So gum Arabic is a natural plant base that's consisting of two acacia tree species, and it is hardened sap. They harvest it. So two types of tree sap makes up gum Arabic. So acacia or Senegal tree, and then the Vasselia, Seyal, Vasselia Seyal. So those two types of tree, Acacia Senegal and Vasselia Seyal, combined together, harvested, and you get the gum Arabic. The gum is harvested mostly from the southern area, 80% approximately, and throughout the Sahel, which is like Senegal to Somalia area. That's where most of the harvesting or the trees are probably found. So what makes it up? It is a complex mixture, which is a mixture of glycoproteins and polysaccharides. So that's what makes up gum Arabic, and mainly consisting of arabinose and glucose. I hope I'm saying it right. Galactose. So it is soluble, water soluble. It's edible. It's used in the food industry, and it is used as a soft drink stabilizer. So it has many functions, not just for painting, but also in the food area. So it is known that gum Arabic is a key ingredient in traditional lithograph and is commonly used in painting or paint production. It's found in glue, cosmetics, and various inking and textile industries use gum Arabic as well. And we all know that the food industry is a big industry using gum Arabic. Okay, so let's talk about pigment that make up the gouache. So pigments are actually colored materials that are almost insoluble in water, and unlike dyes, which are typically soluble. So some of the pigments, they're soluble and some are insoluble. Well, I think they're trying to say it doesn't fully dissolve in water, but it does have that water soluble kind of reaction. So gouache is made up of water plus colored pigment plus a binding agent, which is water, natural or synthetic pigments, and then gum arabic or gum dextrine. Alright, so sorry, dextrin, gum dextrin. So the gum dextrin is more starch-based compound matter. So it's a starch from that you would see in the gouache, the starchy side, I think. And the gum arabic is the water-soluble portion of it, which is a binding agent. And then you have the pigments, either synthetic or natural pigment. Okay, so the gum arabic is plant-based. So gouache is mainly plant-based. All right. There are different forms of gouache. You have gouache in the tube, you have dry gouache, and you have the jelly gouache. Those are the ones that I am familiar with. The dry gouache cakes, I love those. I often use those because I like how the texture dries when it's done. It's really flat and matted, the dry gouache that I have. The jelly has a slight rise, but if you use it like water paint, meaning you blend it really well and you don't paste it on, you get a nice finish. So the tubes, the cakes, dry cakes, and the jelly, those are the three I'm familiar with. And some of the designer brands can be like the Winsor & Newton brand, the Holly Beans, which is the Kryla, or the Reeves. But you have more to it. But those are the most popular ones that I've heard of. So there are a few techniques that you can use with gouache. Gouache is so versatile. It's like acrylic thinking and water paint technique, and you mash those together and you get gouache. So it's neither acrylic nor watercolor paint. It's in the middle, and that's what makes it perfect. So if you like how acrylic texture looks when it's painted, and you like the feel of watercolor, how smooth and flowy that is, so you have a combination of both, and you would get a middleman, which is gouache. That's how I look at it. It is not often heard of as a medium to use. You either hear of acrylic or watercolor, but gouache is a special medium and I love it, and that's why I'm telling you all about gouache. So let's get into the techniques that I use and I know of. So one is the staining technique. Just like watercolor will have that staining effect, which I love as well, gouache can give you a staining technique. It's like a foundation layer. You actually have to make a wash with it, so you dilute it a lot, and that's how you would get your staining from the gouache. Then you have the opaque layer. This is the second layer, as you would say, second or third layer, where you would apply thicker and make a paste and just really pack it on to actually bring out the picture. So applying thick layer without much water diluted into the paint. All right, and then you have wet on wet. This is also known in the watercolor technique as well. You can do the same for the gouache. So you dip the brush in water and then you apply it to the paper, and then you add wet gouache. So mix and dilute your gouache, and then you add that onto the brush and you dip it onto the wet surface of the paper, and that's wet on wet. Then you have your dry brush. This is where you would actually reduce the paint from the brush by dabbing it or wiping it on a paper towel just to get most of the paint on. And then when it's, I would say damp, it's not completely dry, it's going to be damp to, it's more like you're cleaning your brush and you have just a little bit of water left in it. That's the kind of feel it should have. So it's not completely dry. Then you apply that in a quick sweep motion to create like a feather effect. So it's almost like you're cleaning out your brush and you're just swiping it back and forth. So that's the dry brushing method technique. Then you have the famous splatters and blooms. These are blotchy, splotchy, abstract kind of technique, which is also similar to watercolor painting, but watercolor, it has a more fluid flow, while if you're not careful, your gouache is more controlled because it always tends to be on the thicker side, even if you create a wash. So you just have to learn how to manipulate it to get a nice splotchy, blotchy, runny, abstract look. So you completely soak the paint brush, then add a bit of gouache to it, to the tip, and then you apply it to wet or dry area on the paper. And a lot of people do tilting, moving, shifting, or just soaking the paper if you want a nice drippy, runny, abstract look. And that's your splatters and blooms. And then my last tip that I can think of would be blending or re-wetting. So if the area is dry and you have, say, a line, a harsh line or harsh silhouette that you want to blend out, you can re-wet the area and smoothly, gently brush that area out by pulling the pigment away from the silhouette in a steady, smooth motion, just blending it nicely away from the silhouette to make it smoother and flowy and make a good transition into the picture, rather than having the harsh line. But you re-wet the paper, or you actually wet the brush and then do that motion, and that's called blending or re-wetting. Okay, a few tips for you. A lot of times, because we know that gouache can be flaky at times, meaning it can dry and then it does look a bit flaky depending on how much of the gouache is applied to the paper. It looks chalky and flaky, and you're wondering if it's going to break or fall off, or how long can it last. So I've learned a few tips that you can actually seal the gouache painting on paper. One, you can use a wax medium. You can research different types of wax medium that you can use. I don't have any particular brand in mind. You can also use archival varnish. You can give that a try. And my favorite, you can use Mod Podge to seal it. Mod Podge seems to do the job for almost any craft paper work. So I've done Mod Podge, but I've not used the wax nor the archival varnish. Alright, so those are three ways to seal your paint. You also so gouache should last a very long time, just like any painting that you've done. If you paint with like a light fast painting gouache paint, meaning those type of gouache that actually is able to withstand sunlight, direct sunlight. So gouache and a non-fugitive pigment, meaning those that do not fade when exposed to extreme sunlight, direct sunlight. So you want to choose gouache that actually tells you if it stays in the sun, it won't fade or flake or be damaged. And they do have those. So you would think of the professional grade gouache that artists use to do professional work, instead of student grade or cheap grade or something that you want to just practice with. If you use those type, which are not professional grade, you're just using it for practice, and you can hang your painting up but not in sunlight. Put it somewhere in your basement where it actually is nice and cool, away from direct sunlight. There is only the gum arabic side of it, the bonding agent, that you may be concerned about. to see if it will actually last, or it will remain stable. But apart from that, the paint should be lasting as long as any regular professional artist paint should. And you can get those grades, professional grades, from any reputable manufacturer. All right. So I hope that was helpful. So let's do a quick recap. Gum arabic is soluble in water. It is the binding agent that is harvested from two acacia tree species. That's normally in Somalia, Senegal to Somalia, Sahel region or Sudan. That's where the trees are normally found. Not the only place, I would think, but normally harvested. You've got pigments, which can be synthetic or natural, and those are mostly insoluble in water, but it works well for making gouache. And gum dextrin, which is a starch-based compound matter that also makes up the gouache. So gouache is comprised of water, gum arabic, and pigment. It is opaque and it is a water type medium. It is used by artists and industries like food industries, juice as a juice stabilizer, and for designer work. Okay, so gouache is not watercolor, it is not acrylic paint, but it is in the middle and it functions like watercolor. You also have water acrylic paint, gouache acrylic as well. So it can be blended with acrylic, and but you would wonder why, since they already have the gouache acrylic. It makes no sense to blend it, just buy the gouache acrylic itself. Alright, so I hope these tips were really helpful. And if you're going to hang your painting up, please make sure you get the light fast or the paint that are from a professional manufacturer that will actually have the light fast info on. So if you do hang it up or you use it as a commission or a project or a gift, you can guarantee that the work will not fade and everything will be a-okay. Alright, so thank you and have a good one.